Scott here with Hicks Outfitters. It's a very wet start to regular season. I'm here with John DiMaio, our Zone 2 bull hunter. And it's a few minutes before shooting light. It's still pretty dark. We got 4 bulls. One of them's pretty nice right in front of us here, so we're getting low and comfortable and just waiting them out.
Kind of funny, I was out shopping and the phone kept ringing, and I looked down and it was a phone call from Jersey Shore, and I said, I don't know anybody from Jersey Shore. It looked at the message and it said, congratulations, it's the Pennsylvania Game Commission. You were pulled for a Zone 2 Bull Elk tag, and I couldn't believe it. Just had immediate goosebumps, ran home, started talking to my wife, who was getting ready. We were supposed to leave for a party and still had goosebumps, and I was excited, jumping around. Believe it or not, the very first call I received was shortly after the Game Commission called, and after I spoke with them, was from Hicks. It was Scott Armstrong. Got a phone call, and he introduced himself and gave me the congratulations and everything else, and wanted to offer their services to me. And not knowing anything, I just was flabbergasted to begin with. Just didn't know what to do, how to expect anything. And Scott explained everything in detail, and so he and Hicks were on my I guess #1 list at that point. I did get a few things here and there, but basically, bottom line, I stuck with some of the old standby, like my rifle that was, it's kind of like an heirloom. It was handed down from my grandfather to my father to me, and I've been using that Remington 30-06 Model 700 for years now, and I didn't want to go with another rifle, mainly because of the history behind it, and it's more sentimental to me to be able to use something that was in the family and was passed down from generation to generation. Every year, my dad loved to hunt. He got me into hunting. My grandfather and my dad, and we weren't always successful, but we always enjoyed our time together, and he loved it. So February of 22, he passed away. Great years, had a great time with him, but what the big draw was every fall when the Game Commission would put the HD on tap, live elk cams. He and I would sit for hours and just, I get on the computer, look, Dad, he's like, oh, where's that? And we always, for years we would watch it. And, a lot of times he was, not feeling well or sick, but that would up his spirits by seeing that. And he kept saying, did you apply again? Did you apply? And I always said, yeah, I keep applying. I said, I'll never get it. I'll never get drawn. And, even the few months before he passed away, we were just amazed about, all the elk we saw on the cameras, the fighting, the whole rituals with the mating process. And he's like, oh my gosh, and, we would see bear on the thing, deer, turkey, and it was just like, somebody who wasn't able to get out into the woods as often as he would have liked, that brought it closer to him. And he would always say, hopefully one day you'll get drawn and you can be able to carry on that experience and hopefully be successful with finding an elk and getting it. And it worked out. There's no doubt in my mind he had something to do with me being drawn somehow and being successful. There's no doubt he had something to do with it. My wife was happy. She couldn't believe it at first. Actually, when Scott came out to talk to us, he explained everything to my wife and I and how the whole process would work. This was just before signing up with Hicks Run, and I think that helped make her feel at ease. And she told me, you need to go with them because everything sounds great. She's actually spoke to other outfitters on the phone briefly and getting information, and she's a wonderful woman. She can read people very well, and her opinion was that Hicks Run and Scott was the outfitter I should go with, and the guide. One thing that I would like to say is that when Scott put me on the bulls that we came across when I was up scouting, gave me a more calming feeling knowing and seeing them up close, what to expect if and when the hunt came, that what to expect if it was time to try to shoot one. The opening day of this year happened to be a miserable morning, cold, damp, wet rain. It was just miserable. We were dressed in as much rain gear as possible, trying to move as quietly and carefully as possible, not to try to spook anything, and just barely getting late, we were able to come across a bunch of bulls in front of us that none of those were actually a shooter, that Scott had thought that there were other bulls that were possibly better than what we saw. We moved to another little location not far from there, went over a knoll, and noticed a big field filled with bulls. A ton of them were out there. Pretty far away, 200, 300, 400 yards away, but nothing there that looked like a bull that Scott thought that was still in the area that he thought would be more worthwhile to try to harvest. So the neat thing, we were going to checking another area out. We were walking to it, and it was a real swampy, wet area to get through to them. We come across this little field and notice one bull laying down and one bull standing up. And they weren't too far at the time away from us, but they didn't look anything like something that Scott would want us to harvest at this point. He thought there were better bulls out there. So we kind of slowly backed out, did a massive loop around them and came above them, and we're actually closer to them. And at that point, both the bulls looked bigger than they did initially when we were below them. And we were watching them and glassing them we were in a stand of pine trees and looking out at them, and they were much closer. They looked like it would be a possibility that one of them really looked nice. There was one that was laying down, one was standing, and then the one stood up, and they were just kind of standing there grazing. And the more we looked at them, the more at ease I felt, because the initial adrenaline rush that when you see an animal you may possibly be shooting, it fizzled out the longer you're able to watch them. But all of a sudden, one of the bull looks over to the right, and out of nowhere, this nice, beautiful 8-point buck walks right through the center of the field, right in front of him, not far from him, like 20 yards, just like the buck was acting like he owned the field, walked right past the bulls and continued on its way, which was, that was amazing, just seeing that. It was like, wow, that's something else. So we finally determined that, let's check a couple more spots out, and these bulls were not pushed or pressured in any way. They didn't realize we were there. Let's back out and check a couple of little spots, which we did. Now, it was still pouring rain and it was miserable, and everything else seemed, there was no activity. Looped back around and finally made the decision to go after the bigger elk that we saw, the bigger bull. And at that point, it was game on. They, at that point, had moved back to where our original starting position was when we first saw them, and just went inside the wood line. And we actually were able to sneak up as close as possible to them and take a nice shot at the one.
Rack another. You hit him. He's not going anywhere. He's gonna collapse. You got him good. Let him fall. Let him fall. Down he goes. Congratulations, my man. Thank you. Just down to 7x7 beautiful bull in Zone 2 in Pennsylvania, regular season 2023. John, how does it feel?
Outstanding. Outstanding. Adrenaline's pumping. Lifelong dream finally came true. I'm thrilled.
Took 2 shots, but he did go down. We thought he was done. and he came back to life somehow. He stood up, and not running or anything, but you know he was hurting. But we ended up I put another round in him, and that was it. But it was just amazing. The whole time before the shot, leading up to the shot, using this shooting stick and actually shooting, I felt like I was on the range. It was no pressure. I didn't have any adrenaline rush. I didn't have any the buck fever, as they call it, until the bull went down. Then everything came in. But it wasn't that. It was a little more like a calming thing. And then right away, I almost lost it because of my dad, you know, emotionally, because it was something that he wanted for me over the years to have a chance to, and I succeeded. And I know I made him happy, and I was absolutely thrilled. The extraction process was neat. Scott had to leave to go get a signal to call the horse team to come in to help pull the bull out. Next thing I know, I hear a voice, and I hear the clanking of some hooves, and Archie, the pull horse, comes and with a sled and pulls up, and it was game on. It's trying to load him up. Behind Archie I saw Scott in the distance, and I saw two other fellas, and those two other fellas happened to be Andrew and his brother, who I didn't know at the time, had actually, the shot we heard earlier was them actually. Andrew harvested a nice bull in another area that we were going to be checking out later. They offered and helped to come out and come back out to help us load my elk and get it set up and pulled out so we could take it back out to the truck and the trailer to take it to the check station. But those guys were great. They didn't have to help. They voluntarily came out, and the weird thing is just everybody was helping each other, and everybody is so excited for each other and elated, and nothing else mattered but to help each other make it through the process and make it easier. Hicks Run's got to be it's a unique experience. I haven't had anything like this before. You hear about people going with a guide service or an outfitter, and it's like, what do you expect? I was just blown away from the preseason scouting, the accommodations. Jeff and Janet were great. Scott, my guide, was great. Being able to stay at Hicks Run and then later over at the Rack Shack. Accommodations were great. Everything was clean. The meals were outstanding. The hospitality was outstanding. The camaraderie between the guides, the people that work for Hicks, and all the other hunters and their friends that were there to help assist with the hunt as well. It was just absolutely amazing. The guide process was a little confusing at first to me, but then I actually knew somebody who I didn't know it at the time that actually guided or hired Hicks Run and was guided a few years ago on a cow hunt, and I spoke with them, and that made my final decision to go with Hicks. If anybody in the future ever has the opportunity to be drawn for a Pennsylvania elk tag, I highly recommend Hicks Run Outfitters. All of their guides are well versed. They know the terrain, they know the land, they know the movements of the elk, they know where they are, they know their habits. They treat you like family, and it's something you can't get if you're doing something on your own. With even some of the other outfitters out there just didn't seem to have that kind of connection to me anyway. I would just highly recommend going with a guide. This is a once-in-a-lifetime hunt, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I didn't want to mess it up and decided that Hicks was going to be right for me. It's just an amazing animal. Pennsylvania Game Commission did an outstanding job with this elk herd, and beautiful animals. And if anybody has the chance to draw a tag, it's unbelievable the experience you're going to have. Outstanding. It's awesome. It's just exhilarating. There's nothing you can really do to explain it unless you live it. And I've talked to people before about it, and it's Until you go through it, you don't realize what it's actually like. It's just unbelievable.